Welcome to Latte with a Lawyer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the stories of some of America's most successful lawyers, figuring out what makes them tick, how they creatively solve problems, and how others aspiring to be them can follow in their footsteps.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Latte with a Lawyer. I'm your host, Jonathan Brickman, and this afternoon we have Steve Kirsch from St. Paul, Minnesota, with the firm of Larson King. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, you're welcome. And just to keep with the theme of the show, Latte with a Lawyer, you're probably not drinking a latte this time of the day, but what's your favorite morning beverage to get started?
This is going to really shock you. I don't drink coffee or latte or hot tea. I'm a hot chocolate or Diet Coke caffeine guy.
Oh, well, I figured you had to have some caffeine. How would you,
Yes.
function? Okay, so you have a different source of it. Okay, that's fine. I know I didn't drink coffee until I took my first real job, and I couldn't have tea because that's what I grew up with in my family. And I had my first cup of coffee, and I just kept drinking. And now I have to have 2 or 3 every morning.
Oh boy.
Which is probably not great for you, but anyway, it's good stuff. Psychological. It gets my head in the game. But anyway, so tell us what kind of work you do here. I know we chat a little bit, but tell everybody what kind of work you do.
Okay. Well, my law firm is very diverse, but we're a litigation firm.
Okay.
Most of the people are trial lawyers. We don't do criminal law, but pretty much everything else. I do civil litigation, primarily personal injury, primarily product liability and toxic torts. And then that's half of my practice. And the other half is doing mediations and arbitrations.
Excellent. And again, when you say trial lawyer, but you're on the defense side, you're defending the.
Yes, but we do some plaintiffs work too.
Oh, you do?
Partners that do plaintiffs work. I do some plaintiffs work. And one partner that does plaintiff class action work.
Ah, okay. Very good.
So we're pretty diverse for a 30-person law firm.
Oh, 30. Okay, 30 person. Okay, good.
35.
And is everybody located out there where you are?
Yeah, all in St. Paul.
Okay, excellent. Good. So anything more specific about the kind of work the firm does besides the broad stroke that you just mentioned?
Well, there's people that we have several partners that do insurance work where they can cover the review of a policy on coverage issues. We have one lawyer that does a lot of malpractice plaintiff work. So inside the firm, it's a lot of, and of course the class action people are different. We have one lawyer that specializes in doing appeals. So he's in, well, several that do appellate. So if I try a case and lose it, I have a built-in help. One of my partners will appeal it for me.
Ah, there you go.
It has happened.
That makes sense. You keep the business in house, right?
That's right.
That's good stuff. A lot of businesses work that way. My dad was a doctor. He used to hand the patient off to the physical therapist next door. So.
And you didn't become a doctor.
I know. No one in my family. There's 5 boys in my family, and none of us. The closest thing we got is my older brother's a administrator, like a CEO, hospital administrator type, and the other one works runs a physician practice. But none of us want to be doctors after living with one. So yeah. Anyone in your family become lawyers?
Yes. My uncle from Kansas City was a lawyer. I think 3 of his kids were lawyers, or one was a workers' comp appellate judge. And then 2 of his kids were lawyers. So my 3 kids did not want to be lawyers when they were growing up. They didn't want to work that hard.
Really?
And, and they're all, one's a banker, one's insurance, and the other's an IT guy. So
very nice.
Very diverse.
Where do they live? Do they live near you?
I have 1 daughter, 2 daughters in town, and a daughter and a son in the Denver area.
Okay, good, excellent. Yeah, wait, I'm trying to think. It's God, I'm losing my mind. The big bank in Minneapolis was my client. What's the big one? I always forget. Piper Jaffray.
Oh yeah. That's a big investment group.
Yeah.
And they have a building
They had a building. Yeah, that was my client when I used to go to
Yeah.
Minneapolis.
Right.
And years ago, I was in the real estate business, and we actually owned the building across from where the Timberwolves played, Butler Square.
Oh, yeah.
You know that building?
Yeah.
It was one of my great stories. I told it on this podcast to someone else, but when I really was pretty green, Metropolitan Life, I think, was like the institutional owner of that building. They had split the building into two halves. It was condominiumized. So Jim Binger, do you know that name?
No,
He was.
but I don't do that kind of work.
Oh, but he was the chairman of Honeywell. He owned half of that property. He was the CEO chairman of Honeywell, and I worked for Pension Fund Advisor, and we owned the other half. I had to negotiate the sale of our half to Jim Binger of Honeywell, and that was quite an interesting experience when I was in my 20s.
Probably a lot of money involved.
It wasn't so much about the money, because it wasn't that big of an asset, but the process of negotiating with him was very interesting. He was a young guy against this big corporate CEO. It was very interesting, but I'll always remember that story. I think the Timberwolves, they still play there in that same spot.
The Tower?
The basketball team.
They're still, well, they're downtown Minneapolis in the Target Center now.
Yeah, the Target Center.
Yeah, it's still there.
That's right. Okay. Excellent. Good.
I go to some games. The team's very competitive now.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a good sports town, and a good restaurant town too.
Yep.
Actually, I remember that. So interesting. So tell me about the journey, like for you to become a lawyer, and then end up doing the kind of work that you do.
Well, yes, I did want to be a lawyer. My uncle was a big influence on that. And I went to the University of Missouri undergrad, had a good time, when Missouri was the #1 party school in the country. That's when I was there.
Oh, really? They all are. Everyone boasts and says they're the #1 party.
Well, Playboy magazine had them #1. So
oh, really?
That's
Columbia?
that may not
Columbia?
be peer-reviewed literature, but
Okay.
it's, and I heard about a law school up in Minnesota, and I signed up for it. It ended up merging with Hamline University. So it was Hamline University School of Law. And then 3 or 4 years ago, the Hamline Law School and a 100-year-old St. Paul Law School, William Mitchell, merged. And now it's Mitchell Hamline. And in 1974, when I was starting toward the end of my first year in law school, 1974, not 18, 1974, I was hired in June at a law firm, and I stayed about 40 years there, and went a couple floors upstairs to Larson King, or downstairs, I guess. And one of my best friends formed this firm over 20 years ago. And so I've been with a little brief detour in Minneapolis. I've been in St. Paul since I graduated in 1976.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, this firm is a lot of good friends here, very fun atmosphere, but outstanding lawyers. It's nice to have so many trial lawyers that if you get it, we're one of the firms that still tries a lot of cases, and that they're not trying as many cases these days as they used to.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question. A lot of people say that they're trial law firms, but it doesn't mean that they go to court all the time. It just means you will, right?
Most of our active trial lawyers now, I haven't tried a case in several years, and in part because I'm doing, one of the reasons is I'm getting cases settled at mediations, but several of the lawyers here are still trying several cases a year. The cases that go to trial, some of them are big and they're expensive, but they still go to trial. But without ADR, I think the statistics are 95% of the cases settle. So if you look at the national numbers from federal court, normally between 93 and 96% of the cases settle, but it depends on the filing. Obviously, criminal is different than civil. There's civil torts are different than contracts and commercial. So it depends on the categories, but 19 out of 20 cases typically settle before they go to trial. That's been that way for years. But when they go to trial, they can be doozies, weeks, months.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and listen, you go to trial when you feel like you're not getting the right settlement, right? So you're going to push it, but you're always pushing it to get to settle, right?
Right. I mean, typically, your average plaintiff in a personal injury case, this is their only case. And when they go through the mediation process, you have to explain to them what's going on. Let them know that what they tell you is confidential. You can't tattletale to the other side. But anything that you said in the deposition, anything that's in your medical records, that's fair game for me to talk about because the other side has it. And I find that almost universally, these people are honest. They care about their case. And fortunately for me, they listen to their lawyers. Every once in a while, you'll have somebody that has a case that's probably worth $75,000 and they think it's worth millions. And if that's the case, almost every time the lawyer will call me in advance and ask me for help so that the lawyer doesn't have to demean their case, but I do.
That's when you step in as the mediator.
That's right.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and basically, I can say that I've mediated a lot of cases. I've tried a lot of cases. I study verdicts, and you can never predict what a jury is going to do, but you can have some basis for making judgments. And then I'll give them ranges, and more times than not, even those people will eventually wake up and settle.
Got it. So
okay.
Okay, I understand. So those, and I'm assuming that those cases where someone says the case is worth $1 million and it's worth 75, that's a plaintiff.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And maybe their neighbor told them something.
Sure.
Oh, I had a case, I was bit by a dog, and it's amazing. Every case is different. Very rarely in the cases I mediate, you can compare by an example and an illustration, but there's always, the ages are different, the extent of the injuries are different, facts of the accident, the impact of the cars, there are so many nuances.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm in a good spot though. I think the Twin Cities, the defense lawyers and the plaintiff's lawyers, almost to a person, is honorable. There's very little gamesmanship here. I've done mediations in other states. I've done litigation in other states, and I can't say the same. The judges here, by and large, are very smart and qualified and honest. And I've been in different jurisdictions around the country where even my local lawyers would tell me, watch out for this judge, and things like that. That doesn't happen much in Minnesota. So
what does that, does that speak to the culture of Minnesotans?
that's part of it. But I also think that by and large, the governors form judicial selection committees. I've been on 2, and Governor Ventura was one, and Governor Pawlenty was one. I happen to know
Jesse Ventura.
Yeah, he was
I'd
interesting.
like to talk to you about, I mean, it's so interesting that he became governor, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Was he good? Did people like him? Was he effective?
I think he was pretty popular. He ran against 2 very experienced politicians, Hubert Humphrey's son,
Yeah.
and a guy named Norm Coleman, who was mayor of St. Paul and later became a U.S. senator. But here's what Jesse would do. He would be, this is in the year 2000. He would be in a debate, and they would ask about riparian rights, water rights. And Coleman would give an answer, and Humphrey would give an answer, and Jesse would say, I'm paraphrasing, of course, I don't have a clue. I don't even know what that means. And here's the thing, they don't either. They just give you a BS answer like a typical politician because they seem to know the answers to every question. I don't. I would research it. I would appoint people to help me that were experienced in that area, but I wouldn't give a guess. And that
played well.
Played well to the middle range. And so I will say that universally his judicial selections were all sides were very complimentary because he didn't care about politics. He didn't ask him. One of his mistakes was, and I I used to sit in on some of the interviews. He'd ask everybody the same 5 questions. So like when you were in college, people would talk about, hey, did you take that test last semester? Yeah, I got a copy of it. And the professors would ask the same questions. Jesse asked the same questions. So as his 4 years went on, the people in year 3 and 4 did a much better job in the interviews than the first 2 years. But nothing with politics. He did not want to get into politics. He would ask questions like, if you were the judge and one of the people didn't have a lawyer, would you bend over backwards to help them in the law and explain it to them? Or would you just say, look, they didn't get a lawyer, it's not my job to represent them? Things that were sort of very neutral. We're on a desert island. What would 3 things anyway, these are the kinds of questions he would ask. And the last question is, if I appoint you, will you promise me you won't get robitis? He was a big pusher that judges shouldn't have a big head and a big ego and consider themselves special over an average person. And he really believed that. But he was an unusual guy.
Oh, yeah.
And then after he decided not to run, he probably would have got some votes as president, didn't run for re-election. And then he got into all these conspiracy things. And I actually sat on a plane with him. And we sat next to each other and he was reading something. And I had dinners with him. I knew him. And I said, Jesse, what are you reading? It looks like you're reading a galley for a book. And he says, yeah, a friend of mine wrote this book. Did you know that the plane at the Pentagon never really went down? That's all a big lie. And I looked at him and I thought, how do you explain the hole in the ground and all the fires? How do you explain the fact that that's all taped? And how do you explain the fact that everybody on that plane was never seen again? That's crazy. I said, what else is in the book? Well, he said that Bush's brother was in charge of security at the World Trade Center, and they had bombs and not bombs. They had all kinds of pyrotechnic stuff that was put in the building in the elevator so that when the plane hit, the building would catch fire and go down sooner. And he's explaining this, and I look at other passengers and they're like looking like, you got to be kidding me. He went far out.
Wow. So listen, maybe that was foreshadowing for what we're living through today. I don't know.
Yeah, but Palenti was sort of normal. You know, he listened by and large, and Dayton, and now the current governor has a judicial selection committee. I think that's why Minnesota judges are less political. Now they have to run for re-election, get appointed by the governor.
Interesting. Wait, so in other states, they don't get appointed by the governor?
Everything's different. Some states have, Texas, I believe, still has criminal judges and civil judges where, and there's some merit because these judges that take over have to be a judge in all areas of the law.
Right.
I have a really close friend that's a judge, and he was a civil litigator like me. In fact, I wrote a letter to the commission on his behalf. And I've only done that 3 or 4 times, but I always write a bogus letter and I just send it to the candidate. And I put it in the envelope myself to make sure that I don't switch letters. Well, anyway, he has a wonderful sense of humor. He never did criminal law. He didn't do probate stuff. He didn't do divorce stuff, but he had to do that. He had to sit on, he had to take his turn. Texas is a little different. So each state does it different. But the bottom line is when you become a judge, he or she has made a commitment to take less money for the public good. And most of the judges I've met were top lawyers, could have been top lawyers, and they take less money because they believe in society and they believe in access to justice. I raise money for legal aid. The legal aid lawyers are outstanding and they're specialists in their field. You talk to the judges about landlord-tenant law, unlawful detainers, things like that. The lawyers that know what they're doing are legal aid lawyers. The private people like to hire them, but they're ineligible because that's all they do, and they're in court all the time. So I'm a real proponent of Minnesota having really good judges and a real good system. There's
Yeah.
exceptions, of course. And we're lucky that our federal bench, really, the federal judges are excellent. We have a new judge that's being nominated, Jerry Blackwell, who was one of the lawyers in the big trial we had in Minneapolis last year. The
George Floyd.
trial, yeah. And he was one of the prosecutors, and he did it for free. But he was
Is that all settled down? Is all that stuff settled down?
well, they're sentencing. I think the one officer that did most of it got 21 years in federal
Yeah,
court.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if he's been sentenced yet in state court. I forget, but he's gonna. Yeah, of course, that videotape. I mean, that was tough. Both St. Paul and Minneapolis was really. I don't think they've recovered yet.
Yeah.
I think Minneapolis is 50 or 60% back. And a lot of the law firms that had 4 stories or 4 floors on these big buildings, they're down to maybe taking 2 because so many people are working from home, doing what we're doing. We do Zoom, we do conference calls. And the court, I think the Supreme Court Justice Gilday has announced that when you have motions, they're going to continue to do it by Zoom, but they're going to try to do trials face to face. And I agree with that. I think lawyers and judges can talk on Zoom, and you don't necessarily need that personal connection with a jury as you do that way, but you still miss out on, when the hearing's over, talking to the other person.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have settlement talks, and you can't do that with Zoom. But so I think the George incident and the obviously COVID has changed so much.
Yeah. No, interesting. So let me ask you, and I'm interested about your role as a mediator. Do they call them neutrals? And
yeah, they call them neutrals or mediators. Yeah.
Okay. So, because most of the time we talk to litigators, right, and mostly on the plaintiff side. So, what can they? I mean, how do they influence you? I mean, can they do focus groups, and can they present that? They can do all these things to present their case better.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. There's the major plaintiff firms do focus groups.
Yeah.
And they will, if it's a 7 or 8 figure case, I have settled 2 8-figure cases in the last year for one plaintiff. And they do focus groups, and you can have a focus group with 20 or 30 people. You can do Zoom focus group with hundreds. The other thing the plaintiffs do in Minnesota is they have what they call a listserv. I can't get on it. I'm not a plaintiff's lawyer.
Yeah, sure. So like a closed,
especially the small firms or the single practitioner, they run by these fact scenarios. And many times, in fact, just last week, I had one where the plaintiff's firm said, we had a number of listserv meetings, and this is the range they came up with. So they use those numbers.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Otherwise, how would you arrive at what you think is fair for the both sides?
Well, most of the time I don't get those numbers. Those are when I mediate a case. If I can't settle it,
yeah,
and I spend 6 hours listening, and let's say they're hundreds and hundreds of thousands apart, 800 and 300.
Yes.
I don't just pick the mid number and say, split the difference. I listen to what they have to say. And at the end of the day, I make a judgment as to what I think both sides could live with, not what a jury would give them. That's a separate issue.
Sure.
My job is to settle the case. So I use my experience. I use the letters they write me. I make comments about the experts and what will fly in front of a jury, in my opinion, and what won't. And I might say, I think the number is 600. So the plaintiff would go down 200 and the defense would go way up, not splitting the difference. Oftentimes, before I do a mediator's number, maybe an hour and a half before, I'll write a number, and I do only write one number. I'll put it in the back of my notebook because when they say, oh, you're just doing this because of this, they know I wrote the number. Now, some people might write 2 or 3 different notes and use whichever one applies. I don't
Yeah.
do that. Most of the time, mediator numbers are accepted, and they're huge jumps. And if I won't give mediator numbers if it's just a waste of time. I mean, if the lawyer says, Steve, if they offered $9.90, we won't take it. It's got to be, it's got to be 1.1 or more. Honest to God, we'll try the case. And if I've had experience with that lawyer and his client is following the lawyer's advice, I'm not going to pick a mediator number. I might pick one that's, $1,050,000 maybe, but then the defense isn't going to pay it. If I get a plaintiff's attorney that's less experienced, that's a problem. Most of the defense lawyers are experienced. Once in a while, you'll get a plaintiff's lawyer that's a probate lawyer, but's taking a case for their neighbor.
Yeah.
And then that's tough.
But I mean, so you have to do an awful lot of your own analysis and evaluation, right? But the plaintiff can present you, or the defense can, with their analysis, whether it's to a focus group, consultant, as part of the input for you to evaluate.
Yeah, and there's certain lawyers that are more likely to try cases. There are certain firms that are more likely to try cases, and they have a reputation that the defense knows this is their bottom line. If you don't pay it, they respect you. They'll see you in court.
Yeah.
And there are plaintiffs lawyers that don't try many cases, and they really can't pull that thread off because the defense thinks at some point they'll settle. But yeah, I use my own experience a lot, but if I know the lawyers and trust the lawyers, which I mainly do, they give me great guidance because I require them to submit a letter to me with attachments so I know what they're talking about.
Got it. Excellent. So why the switch? Is it because you've been at it a long time that you're doing more mediation than actually trials? Out like a natural progression?
I had a partner that started doing mediations the first year. They became, I think, in the late 70s or early 80s. And it wasn't, probably by the late 80s, I was doing a lot, but I still had a very active practice. Well, I'm 70 now. I've tried 100 cases. I don't really need to try 101. I have great lawyers here that are up to date on everything. All the nuances of picking a jury. I would be rusty. I'd still try a case, but they're stressful. Yeah. These lawyers try cases for the plaintiff and defense. I mean, think if you're a plaintiff's attorney and you got a really good case on damages, you're going to get millions, but you might lose on liability.
Right.
You put a couple $100,000 of the law firm's money in that case and you lose, and you have a client that can't pay you back. That's stress.
Right.
Or you have a defense case where if you lose the case, the company's going to go bankrupt, or the company only has so much insurance. That's very stressful. Mediations, to me, aren't really stressful. They're important and they're serious, but the stress level is not nearly the same. And so I just started going more and more to mediations. And after I did the I-35W bridge case, I started getting cases from people I didn't know. And I do mediations in maybe 4 or 5 Midwest states. I go to Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Illinois. Maybe one time a year, I'll go to some of those places and do a few. But I don't go, I'm not in California or New York. I'm not one of those guys that has a national reputation.
Yeah, got it. Well, it sounds like a way to sort of stay very active and not have to deal with.
Right. And I like lawyers. I enjoy their company. Yeah, we tell lawyer jokes, but I think lawyers are very good citizens. They read what's going on. They know their politics. Most of my friends don't take themselves seriously, but have great respect for the profession.
Excellent. For some reason, Zoom, and this will get edited out, they're like cutting me off in 5 minutes. I'm not sure why. I think it's because we had a bunch of people on in the beginning, which is annoying. So I'll try to wrap it up here quickly. Then we can jump back on. I want to ask a couple of questions, but Okay, interesting. So if somebody wants to reach you and learn more about your practice, have you as a mediator or, your law firm help them, what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
Well, if they check our website at Larson King, LARSON King, and we're in St. Paul, Minnesota, that's our only address and only location, they'll find me. And there's so much I don't do that if we probably have a lawyer that will fit their needs here. That's one of the nice things about not being in private mediation practice, that I can get cases and give it to people who will do a better job than I will, which I do. And you can walk down the hall and get 3 or 4 opinions. And there's a retired judge here, Jack Vandernorth, who also does mediations. And it's nice. We run things by each other.
Yeah.
And, so we have, and then there's another lawyer that just started doing a lot of mediations, who's a litigator, Mark Solheim. And so we have 3 people that do a lot of mediations, which is a little bit unusual in a firm, this size.
Yeah, it sounds unusual from the firms I've talked to, but anyway, that's interesting. All right, well, good. Well, listen, thank you very much, Steve. It's been a pleasure. This is Steve Kirsch with Larson King in St. Paul, Minnesota. And this show is sponsored by EmotionTrac, which is a legal tech company. And we use AI for trial lawyers to collect insights using facial action coding that they use to prepare for mediations and trials.
Jonathan, my pleasure. Nice
Yeah,
talking.
it was great. Thank you.